Please subscribe. This story is about the fate of an extraordinary woman and how difficult it is to discern where reality ends and mysticism, or something beyond our understanding, begins. This woman, whom we'll call Natalie, was born in the last century into a theatrical family. She grew up immersed in the theater and was confident that her entire life would be connected to it. As the years passed, the girl blossomed into a beautiful woman, and her childhood certainty became a reality. She founded a theater and gained fame as the world's only female opera director. She had a wonderful family and 2 children. But in an instant, everything fell apart. Repressions began in the country, and she was arrested as the wife of an enemy of the state. First, there was prison, then exile, and only after 17 years was she rehabilitated and allowed to return home. This tragic period didn't break her, and the idea of creating a theater never left her mind. Only at the age of 60 did she realize her dream and open the world's first musical theater for children. It was a theater with highly professional singers, musicians, and dancers. Magnificent performances were created. The theater flourished and received recognition not only in its own country, but far beyond its borders. We respected and loved Natalie, but we were also a bit afraid of her. It seemed she possessed some supernatural power. Rehearsals were conducted with such emotional intensity that it felt like something might explode at any moment. Once, she asked me to come over to help demonstrate a mise-en-scène. She placed her hand on my neck. After that, I couldn't turn it for half a year. When, in a similar emotional state, she took someone by the hand, their heart would start to ache. We, 30 years younger than her, would collapse from exhaustion by the end of the rehearsal. She remained energetic, taking to the stage and conducting symphonic concerts at the age of 70 and even 80, still youthful, vibrant, and beautiful. Time is merciless. She passed away at the age of 90. The night before, I saw her in a dream, very light, almost ethereal. With a smile on her face, she was moving away from me. That evening, I learned of her death, and for 3 nights afterward, she came to me in my dreams. I knew she was dead, and I would run away and wake up in terror. My friend felt ill on the day of her death. He started vomiting and lost consciousness. The doctors couldn't diagnose him. When Natalie lay in the coffin, her hands remained soft and pliable, and people said this meant she would take living people with her. At that same time, changes were beginning in the country. A word that hadn't been used before, corruption, started to appear. I thought it's good that she doesn't see this. She, who lived for creativity, music, and theater, wouldn't have even been able to comprehend what this is. The atmosphere of the country affected the theater too. The actors and musicians continued to receive their modest salaries, while those involved with finances saw a significant rise in their standard of living, and the quality of the performances declined, losing the warmth she had created. And then the inexplicable began. People always die, but not in the numbers they started dying at the theater. A literal wave of deaths began. The causes were varied and unexpected. Someone was hit by a car. Someone suddenly died from a heart attack, a stroke, kidney failure, and someone even took their own life. I can't name the exact number of deaths, but I was told that about 20 people left this world, but not the actors or musicians. People started whispering among themselves that Natalie was taking those she deemed responsible for the situation. The tragedies became so catastrophic that they decided to seek help from a priest. To ensure accuracy, I called my friend, an opera singer, who worked at the theater during that period and witnessed these events. She confirmed my story and said that she personally showed the priest around the theater. After the priest's visit, the atmosphere began to calm down, and eventually, a new leader came, a young director. I haven't been to the theater in a long time, so I can't speak to the quality of the performances, but I hope everything is good now. The theater bears the name of this legendary woman. Perhaps, from her own world, she watches over her beloved creation and won't allow the theater to fall below the high standards she once set. Michael, that was his name, after graduating from the vocal department of the conservatory, was hired by the Opera Theater. A talented actor, tall, handsome, with a beautiful voice. He was, of course, immediately cast in many performances. We all know how much rivalry and sometimes even hostility can exist between actors. But Michael was so kind and friendly to everyone that no one harbored any negative feelings towards him. I became friends with him. We often spent time together. He and his family would visit us, and sometimes we, with our families, would go to the coast where his parents lived and where he had spent his childhood. He was an excellent swimmer and taught my 5-year-old son how to swim. 6 years passed since he joined the theater, unnoticed. That year, as usual, the theater's actors went on their summer vacation. I went to my summer house outside the city, and Michael went to his parents' home with his family. One night, I had a dream. I was surrounded by small, ugly black dogs with crooked sides. I woke up with an unpleasant feeling, but soon fell asleep again. The nightmares continued. I distinctly felt something very heavy pressing down on me, choking me, and I couldn't do anything about it. I jumped out of bed, still feeling the sensation of choking, and I couldn't understand what had just happened. The next day, while I was resting in the garden, the gate opened, and an actor with whom I also had a good relationship appeared. To say I was surprised would be an understatement. No one at the theater knew the address of my summer house, nor were they even aware of its existence. When I asked, "How did you find me?" he couldn't answer. It was as if some unknown force had shown him the way. The news he brought, Michael had died, hit me so hard that I had a heart attack. After a month of illness, I was unable to attend my friend's funeral. One day, while sitting and watching some television program, something unusual happened. Normally, shows are interrupted by commercials, but there were no commercials, and instead, a smiling Michael appeared, wagging his finger at me. Horrified, I tried to switch the channel, but the TV wouldn't change. With trembling hands, I turned it off. This happened for several days. For a long time after that, I not only refused to turn on the TV, but avoided even going near it. What was it? Perhaps Michael was upset that I hadn't been able to see him off. I can't forgive myself either. Now it seems he has forgiven me. I haven't seen him again, but he will forever remain in my memory and in my heart. Theater is an organism where fantasy blends with reality, where earthly life meets the unearthly. The most fantastical theater, surrounded by many legends, is Moscow's Pushkin Theater. I want to tell a story that I heard directly from the theater staff. The theater, which was then called the Chamber Theater, was founded in 1914 by the famous director Alexander Tyrov. His wife, Elisa Kunin, was the leading actress. There are different opinions. Some say the theater flourished, while others claim it was unlucky due to its location. There were 3 reasons for this. First, near the theater, there once stood a house that was cursed. According to local legend, devils took up residence there, and as the writer Vladimir Gilyarovsky wrote, "At night, passers-by would hear howling, the clanging of rusty iron, and sometimes bricks would fly into the street, while many people saw white ghosts through the broken windows. Second, the theater was adjacent to the buildings of the Church of St. John the Theologian, and the theater itself was built on the graves of the Streltsy, soldiers executed by Peter the Great in 1698. Third, the church was closed, and the theater set up its workshops in the place where the church had stood. As often happens, a streak of good luck can turn into a bad one. In 1949, Tyrov was slandered, expelled from the theater, and placed in a psychiatric hospital, where he died. The theater was renamed the Pushkin Theater, and Tyrov's wife, Alisa Kunin, was asked to leave the theater. She dreamed of opening a Tyrov museum at the theater, but after the theater's renovation, a restroom appeared where his office had once been. She cursed the theater. After her husband's death, she lived for another 25 years, but the curse took effect. People died unexpectedly, perished in plane crashes, and the main directors were constantly changing. Mirrors in the theater would crack for no reason, doors would slam shut, chandeliers would go out, and sets would overturn. After Alisa Kunin's death, staff reported seeing her ghost in the corridors or her silhouette in the back rows of the theater. At night, theater guards heard footsteps when no one was there, or they saw a fading mist. In the end, a priest was invited to bless the theater. In the early 1990s, when the church was restored and the theater building was consecrated, during a rehearsal, a large, beautiful tropical butterfly from an unknown source flew onto the stage. It circled over the stage and then disappeared. Perhaps it was the soul of Alisa Kunin, who had come to lift the curse and forgive all wrongs. Since then, the ghost has vanished, and the Pushkin Theater has become one of the most popular theaters in the capital. Theater superstitions. Actors are very superstitious people. Even if they don't believe in all things supernatural, they still observe rituals. Many cross themselves before going on stage, and ballet dancers, before putting on their ballet shoe, must breathe into it a few times. It's believed that by doing so, the shoe will fit snugly, and the ballerina will successfully perform her part. There are several roles in ballet that are considered unlucky. For a long time, the role of Giselle was one such role, linked to the tragic story of the great Russian ballerina, Olga Spessivtseva. In 1919, on the stage of the Mariinsky Theater, she performed this role. It is said that after the mad scene, the audience wept. Olga, a sensitive and emotional person, became so immersed in the role that she truly lost her mind. Ballet dancers began to fear the role of Giselle, believing it ruined ballerinas. Shakespeare's tragedies are also filled with magic. In Othello, Desdemona loses a handkerchief given to her by a gypsy. Everything that happens afterward was foretold by this handkerchief, and its loss led to the tragedy. Shakespeare's most mystical tragedy is Macbeth. From its first production at the Globe Theatre, unbelievable events started occurring. The actor playing Macbeth suddenly died. Then, the actor playing Duncan was killed on stage. For some reason, instead of a prop dagger, a real one was used. Another actor was injured by a sword and died. The most terrifying event took place in a New York theater in 1849. During a performance, a fight suddenly broke out among the audience. 22 people were killed and 100 were wounded. After such tragic events, the play was forgotten for 100 years. Today, Macbeth is back on the stage, but is performed far less frequently compared to other Shakespeare plays. A relatively young chamber theater in St. Petersburg is located in a place full of legends. It was once the mansion of an executed nobleman, and in the 19th century, it was rebuilt for the young Baron von Derviz. A stunningly beautiful living room in an Oriental style is followed by one in the spirit of Louis XVI. The next hall is a real grotto with stalactites hanging on the walls. And finally, there's the White Theater Hall, adorned with mirrors and statues where performances take place. In this incredible hall, the ghost of von Derviz is often seen sitting in the audience, and sometimes the silhouette of Meyerhold, who once established a house of interludes here, is spotted. It is believed that these ghosts protect the theater. The most famous ghost is considered to be the Phantom of the Opera, who haunts the Paris Grand Opera. Visitors are not allowed into the underground part of the building, where a male skeleton with a ring on its finger was discovered. Gaston Leroux wrote the novel The Phantom of the Opera, which was later made into a film and a musical that still runs in London today. Various incidents, such as the falling chandelier that killed a woman, are attributed to the Phantom. Perhaps it's a myth, but box number 5 at the Grand Opera has a sign that reads, "It is reserved for the Phantom of the Opera." Theater is a place overflowing with the emotions of both actors and the audience. It is in theaters that ghosts often appear.